Okay, so welcome to this introductory lecture on complex networks. So today the first thing that I am going to do is to give you a idea of the resources which I will be mostly following during the course. So the first book that I suggest, Networks and Introduction, Oxford University, is kind of the book, the textbook for this course, but whatever we will be doing, much of it has been covered in this course, but that is not like everything. We will also have materials from other resources, and as we go forward we will explore. I will let you know which parts you need to refer to other resources. Okay, so how many of you are aware of this picture? I guess most of you have seen it at one point in time. This is the famous Gangnam Style video, a snapshot of that video, and why the point that I am trying to illustrate through this picture is that there has been a remarkable thing that has happened as soon as this video was released, and that remarkable thing is what we show in this slide. So what you see is that the YouTube viewership of this video has exponentially grown over time. So it has now like 800 million views, like 1 billion likes on Facebook, 150 million followers in Twitter. So the question is like, what actually made this video go, if you say, viral? So what was the reason why this video went viral? So, and these are the kind of questions that we will try to answer through this course. We will try to make theoretical developments as to why these kind of things happen in a network settings. Okay, so as we go forward we will understand what is a network, what is actually meant by a network and things like that, but this is one of the very first motivation to study this kind of a subject, like what made. So the question that you can start off with is like, what made Gangnam Style popular or viral? And the rest of this course is kind of a way to answer this question. The another example where you see like complexity or complex things is this picture. So this picture, it turns out it looks like a tree trunk, but it's actually not that, and it resembles, or it is actually the termite cathedral. I guess all of you are aware of a termite cathedral. So these termites work like tiny engineers, so they bring in mud particles from different areas and they accumulate it in a place, and like they do it for quite some time, and suddenly a mound of this structure gets formed. So this is another striking example of a complex system. Okay, so this brings us to the very basic idea of what a complex system is and what it means by its emergence. So the emergence resembles the development or the growth of a complex system, but this growth is not externally controlled. There is no external coordination to this growth. It's mostly self-organized. That is, the particles organize themselves, they interact among themselves and organize themselves to result into a complex structure, as you have seen, like the termite cathedral example. So complexity, actually you can find complexity, examples of complexity everywhere, starting from our life. Say for instance, I have illustrated one example here in this slide, where you see atoms. Those atoms combine to form molecules, and these are like molecules in your DNA chains, if you have come across them. So these DNA chains actually contribute in the formation of cells. These cells then have complex interactions to form what you call tissues. Tissues interact with each other to result into organs. Organs interact with each other to form what you say organisms, the way we are, and these organisms then interact with each other to form what you see today in Facebook and Twitter, social networks. Okay, so the point that I am trying to make here is that complexity is all pervasive. Okay. So, you find complexity in every segment of development, and complex networks, the course itself tries to provide us with a tool to understand the emergence or the organizing principles of this complexity. So, physicists actually view complexity from three different so they divide a complex system and they look at a complex system from three different perspectives. So, one perspective is the complex system as a whole. It is called the macroscopic level of view. So, for instance, in this slide I have given an example of a diamond. So, that is the macroscopic view of the system. On the other extreme is the microscopic view, where you have all these tiny atoms and interactions between these atoms to give shape to that diamond that you see there at the macroscopic level. And somewhere in between is another level, which is the mesoscopic level. So, the mesoscopic level, as you see here, which I circle out in red in this slide, is the mesoscopic level is where you see this all these carbon bonds, which actually result into this hard diamond material that you see at the macroscopic level. So, physicists actually study a complex system from all these three different perspectives, because all these three different perspectives have to tell you interesting stories. So, all these three different perspectives have their own story, and if you untangle them, you get to understand the organizing principles far better. Okay. So, now coming to networks. So, all this time we have been only talking about complex systems. So, the question then is like, where do you fit in network or complex networks in this whole gamut of complex systems? So, the idea is very simple. A complex systems can be conceptualized as a network. So, a network is a formal structure or an abstraction which has two basic entities, nodes and interactions among nodes. So, each unit in the complex system or each entity in the complex system can be thought of as a node, and interactions between entities, between heterogeneous as well as homogeneous entities inside the complex systems, inside a complex system, can be thought of as edges of a network. So, you have two entities in the in a network, the nodes and the edges. The nodes model the entities of a complex system and the edges model the interactions between the entities. Okay. So, that is how you formulate a network or a complex network from a complex system. So, complex system studies have actually this idea of formalizing complex systems as a network or a graph, this saw its boom only lately, but people have been studying formalizations or formalisms of graphs for very long time. So, many of you are probably aware of the Euler's 7 bridges experiment that he started in 1736. Then there were people from chemistry, there were people from physics, there were people from mathematics, there were people from sociology who were using graph structures or network structures to study various interesting problems. Now, suddenly somewhere around 1998 to 2000, if you look at the timeline, suddenly somewhere around 1998 to 2000, a lot of complex systems, so a lot of statistical physicists actually started taking interest in modeling complex systems as networks or as complex networks, and this saw a very big boom after 2000, when there was this World Wide Web and the internet that came into being. So, the World Wide Web can also be thought of as a network, where each node in this network is a page, is a web page, and two nodes are connected by a hyperlink, that is one web page hyperlinking another web page. So, that is how a World Wide Web graph is conceptualized. Similarly, you can think of internet as a complex network, where each node is a computer and the interaction between two computers is through a communication line, and there could be important computers in this network like routers, which we will later on know that these, so there will be special names given to these nodes like hubs, etc. So as we proceed with the course, we will get to know more about these, but the basic idea here that I am trying to illustrate is that it was during this time from 2000 onward that there was this big boom in modeling complex systems like the World Wide Web or the internet into networks. So now the question is that, so why are we so interested in this kind of complex networks or modeling complex systems as complex networks? There are two important things. So what is so complex about these complex networks? If we try to understand this, we have to question that why are we doing this formulation. So the primary reason that we are doing this formulation is actually twofolds. One is we want to understand the structural arrangement that has gone into the network. So we want to have precise quantitative metrics that will illustrate the structural arrangement of the network, and as a result we will also get a feeling of the structural arrangement of the complex system from which the network has been modeled. Similarly, the other reason that we try to model complex systems as network is the dynamicity. That is, these systems are not static, they change over time. As you can imagine, the World Wide graph, the World Wide Web graph or the internet graph, it is changing every day, right? Every day new web pages are coming in and new hyperlinks are built. So it is changing every day. So new nodes are entering into the system, new edges are formed, and these actually makes the system dynamic, and it is easy to model this dynamicity in the form of a network, where the dynamicity of a particular page entering can be modeled as a node entering into the network, and the dynamicity of new edges getting included in the network can be modeled as new hyperlinks being built. Okay. So now the question is that how can one endeavor, or how can one try to collect structural property from these large networks, try to make some interesting inferences from these large networks? That is one question. And the second question is, how can one understand the dynamicity, if there are ways to do so. So for these, people, statistical physicists and computer scientists together have tried to develop a bunch of metrics, and some of the buzzwords that we will come across through the course are like heavy tail degree distribution, high clustering coefficient, preferential attachment, community structure. So these are some of the buzzwords that you will quite often come across in the rest of this course. So as we move along the course, I will define each of these independently and with appropriate examples wherever necessary. So, but before we go into all those quantifications, it is actually good, to motivate ourselves that really complex networks or complex network structure can give you good indications of the structural properties and the dynamicity of a particular complex system. So here in this slide, I actually give an example of the business ties that were formed in the US biotech industry in the year 1998. So these are like business relations. The nodes are the different business organizations, and the edges are the different business relations, like it could be financial relations, it could be research and development collaborations. Okay. So the red links indicate research and development collaborations, the green links indicate financial collaborations, and nodes could be like different companies like investment companies, pharmaceuticals, research labs, public sector companies, biotechnology labs, etc. Okay. So this, so as you see, so this gives you an immediately this picture tells you something about the structural organization of this complex system, and this becomes more apparent as we proceed in the next slide. You see, the previous slide that I showed you was a snapshot from 1988. Now, in the next slide I show you the snapshot of the same set of organizations, but taken in 1991. You immediately see differences, right? So, the first difference that one can immediately identify is that the number of edges in the network have increased, and it has increased manifolds. Also, apart from that, you clearly see that there are two partitions of edges. One is a set of nodes among whom you have mostly R&D collaborations, and another is a set of nodes among which you mostly have financial collaboration. So, you see these two important developments already happening from the 1998 to the 1988 to the 1991 snapshot. So, that actually tells you like how a complex system can be nicely modeled in the framework of a network, and interesting topological properties and the dynamics can both be cultivated from such constructions. So, to motivate further I give you some other examples, like there is this other example of a structure of organization. So, all this red, blue, green are the different departments of the organization, yellow are the consultants to the organization, and gray are some external experts, and you see edges running between each of these nodes. So, or each of these entities in this organization. So, again here you can see that the blue nodes organize themselves in one set, the green nodes organized in themselves in another set. So, in essence there is a modular structure out there. So, that is already becoming very obvious from this visualization. So, there are certain such interesting topological structures that one can really identify from such networks. So, as I was telling you that the internet can also be conceived as a graph, and here I give you example of such a complex graph or a complex network. So, this was taken like I think in 2001 or something, and believe me, this network has grown much more complex now. So, you can already see that there is a lot of complexity already in this network, but this has become this has grown much more complex now at this point. So, apart from the complex structure, there is one more interesting thing that I was already pointing out in one of the previous slides. So, you see that the network immediately shows you some star like structures. So, like some hotspots. So, these are kind of the most important routers or gateways through which maximum communication takes place. So, that is why they are like star, they appear as a star structure, and in complex networks languages these are mostly called hub nodes. Okay. So, the idea is that visualization, actually good visualization of the network already tells you some interesting signatures of the structural properties of a network. The next example that I am showing you is of a friendship network that was like collected from a US school, where you have three different types of entities: the white students, the black students, and other students who could not be classified into any of these groups. Okay. And these are the blue nodes are the white students, the white nodes are the black students, and the purple nodes are the other students, and edges in this network represent friendship relationship. So, as you can immediately see that this network there is a bipartition happening. So, blacks tend to be more friends with blacks, with other blacks, and whites tend to be more friends with other whites, whereas interactions or friendships between blacks and whites, in between blacks and whites, is much less. That actually becomes pretty apparent from this network. So, again there is this idea of modular organization, where you have basically two distinct groups, one with the black entities and the other with the white entities, and the other group is well spread. So another example, another very interesting example is that of the collaboration network. So this is one of the examples that I like very much. So so in the scientific world, actually what happens is that there is, so when a scientist work on a particular problem, this work needs to be accredited by some organization, and that happens in the form of something called a publication. So so scientists actually tend to get their work published in order to get these works recognized by other scientists. So and while in the process of doing so, while a paper is written or a publication is being made, the paper has to refer to a bunch of other papers. Okay. So this phenomena is called the phenomena of citations. So as we go deeper into the lectures, we will discuss in more details the construction of citation networks, but just to give you a brief idea. So the basic idea is that one paper at a particular point in time can refer to older papers in time, from which some of the ideas of the current paper has been borrowed. So each paper in this network is a node, and there could be citation links indicating that a particular paper has cited or referred in its reference list some other papers from older times. So this is one form of the network, and another form of the network in this scientific world is the collaboration network, where we say that each node in this network is a scientist, and two scientists are connected by an edge if they have collaborated or co-authored on a paper, on a single paper. Okay. So there is an edge between two scientists if they have collaborated in a particular paper. So and if you look at the visualization of such a collaboration network, you again see the same kind of modular structures that I was talking of. So there is this orange group, the blue group, the green group. Each of this is a set of scientists working probably on a similar type of problem or a similar topic or a similar area of research. For instance, in computer science you can think of like people are working in the red people might be working in artificial intelligence, while the yellow people might be working in data mining, the orange people might be working in something more hot like machine learning. Okay. So and you immediately see such groups actually appearing in the network. Okay. So so this example that I am giving you now is kind of one of the very striking examples, because if such kind of studies or such kind of analysis were made before a terrorist attack, then the attack could have been bypassed. Okay. So this is actually the social network of the 9/11 terrorist attack. So actually each node in this network is actually corresponds to a terrorist, and an edge corresponds to a telephone call that terrorist made to some other terrorist. So this is like the trap of those telephone calls. Now if you look at this network, you immediately see some interesting things. So there are actually, as I was talking in telling you, in the case of internet there were certain hotspots or hubs. In this particular example also you see certain hotspots or hubs. If this kind of a network structure was studied before the attack, and if you could somehow dysfunction the nodes which act as hubs in this network, you could have stopped the 9/11 attack. Okay. So actually this analysis tells you how practical or how practically important study of networks could be in the context of modeling such social or complex systems. Another example that I would like to point out is about this Swedish sex web. So we will talk more about this example in the next lecture, but just to give you a brief idea. So here the network is composed of nodes which are like individuals, males and females, and ages indicate whether a sexual partnership has taken place between a pair of nodes. Okay. And there were around 4,781 Swedes who actually participated in this assignment, and within the age of 18 to 74, and the response rate was like roughly 59%. So, and like we will see that this analysis, this network construction and the posterior analysis gives certain very interesting indications about the topological structure of the network. So, similarly you can have road and airlines network. So, in the airlines network, each node could be an airport, and then the flights going from one airport to another airport might establish links between the two airports. In this way you can, and so here again you can have concepts of hotspots, and so when some hotspots dysfunction, what would be the overall effect on the network. These types of things could be actually studied very nicely in the framework of this formulation. Similarly, in the biological world, you have genetic interaction network. This example is also very interesting, where you see that so this is like the genetic interactions that takes place between different genes, and what you see here is that there are a bunch of stars and two important stars are connected among themselves. So, this is again a very interesting structure. Actually, this looks very much like the internet structure, the technological networks. Okay, so similarly there is this yeast protein interaction network. Here again you see modular structures, like there are parts which are green, more green, there are parts which are more red, there are parts which are more yellow. So, we will look into more details of how to identify these modular structures in an algorithmic fashion later in the course. So, the questions that we would like to ask in the rest of this course is, does this networks display some symmetry? Are these networks creation of some intelligent objects, or have they emerged? Can there be some very simple principles? Can there be some very simple ways to understand it, some stochastic guidelines which tells you how these networks, how this complex structure have emerged? Okay. So, some of the things that we will try to cover, that we will definitely try to cover in the rest of the course, are some basic measurement metrics, social network analysis metrics, community analysis, and a case study on citation networks. So, in the basic measurements we will try to look into degree distribution, clustering coefficient, and the basic properties which people usually study to understand the topological structure of the network. In the social network analysis, we will basically concentrate on understanding network roles, like what roles people play in a network, how these roles are related to one another, and things like that. In the community analysis section, we will mostly study how to identify modular structures from a network. We will try to understand. So, this is a combinatorial optimization problem, and it is usually known to be a hard problem, but we will try to come up with heuristic solutions and show, like in certain cases, how well these heuristics perform. And in the last part of the course, we will try to look into one specific example of citation networks, which is really a growing network. So, it changes actually over time. New nodes join in, new links come in, new links are built in, and we will see certain interesting properties of these citation networks and what these properties actually tell you about an entire field like computer science and its subfields. So, all these interesting structures gets revealed through the analysis, through an appropriate quantitative analysis of citation networks. That is what we will see in the last part of this course. Thank you very much.